Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing and we have very exciting news for you today. My third book, Fat Quarter Patchwork Quilts, is here and ready to send out to you guys. It's got 12 fat quarter friendly patterns, 2 of which are exclusive to the book and 10 of which were originally developed for our subscription club, Fat Quarter or Stash with Stephanie. And too many fat quarters in here. But anyway, so it is now available. We can get you guys a signed copy if you order on our website, shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. The patterns that are in the book that were originally developed for our club are now only available in the book, so that's the only place you can get them. But it's a fabulous deal. It is about the price of like $3 more than like a regular pattern, and you get so much for it. You're gonna get how to quilt, all the basics that you need to learn, some ideas on choosing your fabric, the supplies you need, and then you get 12 patterns. So even if you just want to get it for the 2 patterns that are exclusive and have never been out anywhere else, it's still going to be less than if you had bought those individually on our website. So go grab a copy. So we're going to start off today's tutorial with a exclusive tutorial for Dot Dash, which is one of the exclusive quilts in the book. It's this one right behind me. You guys have been asking for weeks what this quilt is in the corner, and I've been very vague in my replies saying it's in our book and we'll tell you more about it when it comes out, because with all of the shipping delays and the craziness that's gone on in the last year and a half, we didn't want to say too much about it or do pre-sales until the book was actually here in our hands. That way you guys wouldn't get frustrated waiting forever. But it's here, we can ship it to you now, and we're going to do a tutorial. The original fabric for the quilt was a Shell Rummel line. We are getting more Shell Rummel in, but not until probably January or February. So what we're going to do right now to kick it off is we are doing spookier and sweeter with Art Gallery fabrics, and let me tell you, this is so cute. We've got most of the blocks assembled for it right now, and it's just absolutely adorable. It's a very feminine Halloween collection, and it just looks so cute. You can see all the fabrics behind me. We did a separate video when it came out showing you all of the cute fabrics that are in it, but it's got your regular oranges and blacks that you think of for Halloween, but there's also some nice soft purples and pinks, and it really is very cute. And the motifs are really fun to show off. So what we did, we've got kits available for you where you get to pick your own background. The one that I'm doing is this Cross and Bones, but we also have several other, well, you can see them back here, very light value prints that are really cute. And they just look really adorable. And this is a busy enough quilt to where even if you pick like one of the busier prints, it's still going to stand out because the color value is so different. So check that out, pick your own background, but you're going to get the same fat quarters as we used for these main sections. You just kind of get to pick your own background there. All right, so this one is really fun because it is mostly strip pieced, which makes it go pretty fast. Now we got a little excited when we were sewing these together, and I've already strip pieced this top part together, but I'm going to show you strip piecing the bottom because there are some tips and tricks even if you know how to strip piece. Now, when I design our patterns, we do it assuming you're going to have 21 inches of usable width from the edge of the selvage to the fold, and you can get that in most fabrics as long as you don't pre-wash your fat quarters, and 17.5 inches of usable width going this way. So that, again, typically you can get as long as somebody hasn't shorted you big time, which whenever we cut ours, we cut them to 18.5 inches so that you definitely get what you pay for and you can get everything you need out of it. But because we need exactly 21 inches, I want to make sure that I am sewing and keeping my selvages all together on the same side. And I want to do my best to line them up. That way I can cut all the way from side to side, because let's say we've got a fat selvage here. And if I did one way and one the other, I've got more than 21 inches from here to my fold. But if I've got one going the opposite direction, then I'm going to be losing a full inch here. And so you might not have enough in order to do what you need to do for this quilt. So just make sure that you've got all of your selvages on one side. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just flip this right sides together, and I'm just going to stitch down using a 1/4 inch seam, keeping those together. I don't ever pin this. It kind of defeats the point of it being fast for strip piecing if you take the time to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and stitch it and make sure my edges are lined up as I go. All right, so as I do this, I'm just kind of lifting up and I'm getting my edges lined up, whatever will fit on the sewing machine. So I just kind of hold that in place with my fingers and go ahead and let that go until I can't hold on any longer. And then at that point, I'm going to reline up my edges, just get those edges nice and lined up, and keep on going until I've got my entire piece stripped together. Now, when you get to the end, your pieces might not be the same length. That's totally fine. As long as you're going to have at least that 21 inches, don't worry about it. Now, what I recommend you guys do, because you have a lot of these to do, is chain piece. So you're just going to lift up, slide the next one under, and keep on going until you get everything together. I'm just doing the one for this video, so we're going to go ahead and break thread and get this pressed open. So I almost always press my seams open. To do that, I just put my fingers in the middle, and I just keep my fingers down a few inches ahead of the iron, and that sort of finger presses it open, makes it really easy to just slide the tip of your iron straight down that seam. This makes it really great flat block when you're all done, and it also gives you really unlimited possibilities for quilting because you don't really have any bulky seams that you have to avoid. When I'm all done, I'm going to go ahead and flip that over, and it should be nice and straight. If you see like a little wiggle on the back, that means you pressed a pleat in and you're going to need to straighten that out. But what I like to do is also press it from this side as well, and that just makes it super, super flat. All right, so I've got my pieces put out now. We're going to have 2 shorter strips and 1 wider strip, and they're each going to have one of our background strips that is very skinny in between. So now we've got to get these all joined to our center. I'm just going to go ahead and do this one first. Again, make sure that the selvages are all on the same side, so you're going to make sure you've got your 21 inches of usable width when everything is ready to be cut apart. All right, we're just going to keep strip piecing, and just like we did, and press them open, and then we're going to get ready to cut this apart. So when I get to this point where I pressed everything open, I like to give everything a spritz with my spray mister. It's like stuck on. What happened here? Like we need a new one. We have dropped it too many times. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give that a good press. And that little bit of spray mist keeps me from having to put water in my iron, because every iron I've ever put water in eventually spits and makes your fabric gross. And I like to keep this one nice. I've had it for 5 years. It's still going strong. And that just helps me get a really super flat seam, which is again going to make great flat blocks and also make it a lot easier to cut everything apart next when we create our strip piece units. All right, so I told you earlier, we're going to need all 21 inches from the edge of our selvage to the edge of the fabric here. This is my shortest section, so I want to measure and make sure I've got that. And I do. I've got a little bit less than 21 and a half. But what I do when I cut these, when I need exactly 21, is I always start on the end that is not the selvage. Because if we need to get like a little bit of the selvage in, that's going to be okay, because as long as it's less than 1/4 inch of the selvage, one, you're still working with regular quilting fabric, it just has a printed selvage on it, and 2, it'll be hidden in the seam allowance. But if you run out over here, like there is no more fabric, you're SOL. We don't want that. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just square up this edge, because all my strips are a little bit different length and we want to start off with a nice square piece. So I've got an inch line even with my seam allowances here, and I'm going over as far as I can so that I'm nice and even with where the edge of this short strip here is, and then I'm going to go ahead and give that a trim. Let's get that out of the way. All right, now I'm going to turn it around so my cut edge is on the left, because I'm right-handed, so I'm going to cut on this side. Now we need to cut 2 larger pieces and 4 smaller pieces. The measurement for that is in the book, so you can grab that on our website, shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. It's called Fat Quarter Patchwork Quilts, so you can get a signed copy. from us. So that would be a great way to say thanks for all the free tutorials. So I'm going to go ahead and get this lined up, and you want to, this is definitely a measure twice, cut once situation, because if you are off on your cutting, then you are not going to have enough to do your quilt. So be very careful and just be mindful when you're cutting. Don't rush through this step. All right, so just like when I was squaring up, I'm making sure to have an inch line even with the top here, and then I'm nice and even with the measurement I need to cut to on the left here. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to put my palm flat on the ruler with my pinky to the side. That's going to help keep the ruler from slipping while I cut. And I'm able to just go ahead and give that a trim. Now we've got to do that again. We need a second one of those. Now I need my 4 smaller ones. All right, as you can see, we do not have a lot left here. It would be enough if, like, say your piecing got off a little bit, you weren't super straight when you strip piece, you will be able to straighten it up maybe once or twice, but you got to be really careful because there is not wiggle room. You're just going to be grabbing more fat quarters if you mess that up, because you're not going to have enough. So we're ready now to start assembling our block, because it's super fast because we strip pieced all the components to the big main vertical rows. So this part is what I think is most fun, and that's when you get to mix it up with the other strip piece units. What I try to do whenever I make a quilt like this, or I'm giving advice to one of my team members when they're making a quilt like this, is to just make sure that you are mixing it up, like you are having different color values in there. This is a good one where we have like kind of a light, a medium, and a dark. This one we have 2 darks and a light, a dark and probably 2 mediums here. And it really is just going to let the eye go all around the place. And then when you're putting it together, if you try to make sure that you are not repeating if you can, or if you do repeat, that it's not right next to it. Like it would be okay to have this in again, as long as it was maybe like in one of the corners. And it really will make your quilt look very scrappy, even if you have worked entirely from one line like we do in all the quilts in this book. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and stitch our sashing strips to the pieces here, and then we're going to be ready to join everything together, because this is just so fast of a block. It goes so quick. Now I've got to press these open, and it's the same process as when we were pressing the strip piece open, except instead of just gliding my iron down, I'm going to lift and press, because I don't want to accidentally get any of these seams going the wrong way, as we want them to stay nice and flat as we work. When I'm done from the one side, I'm going to go ahead and give it a flip, and this time I can just go straight down that seam and get it nice and flat. All right, so now we've got our pieces ready to sew to our center. There's one tiny little tricky bit here, but it's not hard. You just kind of pay attention as you're sewing. So we want to make sure that these pieces are lined up both on the top and bottom and on both sides, because that is what is going to make it look like it's a continuous piece, even though it's definitely chopped up into different bits. Like this is obviously a different piece than this, and then we've got a different piece in between here. So what makes it a little challenging is if I just flip this right sides together, I can't see that seam, because there is a little bit in between there with that sashing strip. So what I like to do is I'm going to flip over this middle piece here, and I'm going to line up a ruler with my seam, and then I'm just going to take a friction gel pen, which will go away with heat, and I'm just going to extend that seam line up. That way when I'm pinning, I can really clearly see where those bits should be. And we'll zoom in when we get to that part so you can see me pinning and using this guide to make sure everything is in the right spot. All right, so I've got my line here that extends up from the seam, so I know right where the center of that seam is. And I can use that to line it up with my actual seam on the other part. So I'm just working to make sure that this is lined up right with the center of where that joint is. And I'm just gonna put a pin on the right side of that seam allowance for both sides here. Then when I sew, I'm able to stitch until I'm in the first half of that seam allowance. Then I can take my pins out and I'm good to keep going the rest of the way. And that will allow me to really make sure that everything looks like it's right in alignment, even though I didn't have a seam to line it up with. I'm going to go ahead and give this a press. Again, it's really important to make sure you are lifting and pressing when you do this, because we got a lot of seams at this point. We don't want anything to get flipped going the wrong way. All right, everything's looking really good. Those lines that I drew are totally gone from the heat. Everything looks really aligned from this side. Let's take a peek. Oh, that looks really good. Everything is going right straight through. It just looks fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and press from this side. And then we'll join our other side on, same way, mark our seams and then go. One note, if you are marking on the same surface that you're ironing, you might want to move because the friction gel pen goes away with heat, so you might have a hard time actually getting your marks on if you put it on, say, a hot pressing surface, because it's going to want to go away immediately. So I'm going to go ahead and press and mark, sew, and press, and then we are almost done with this block. Make sure you follow the instructions in your book to learn how to create the sashing and cornerstone strip. It's just strip piecing like we did to create our sections of our block. It's just you have a really tiny strip and then a very long strip, and it makes it go very, very fast. All right, so now all I have to do is attach this to the bottom of my block and we're done. We're good to go. Let's just match these seams and go ahead and sew. Now, whenever I'm pinning a strip like this, sometimes your block can get to be a slightly different size if you didn't press quite right, or maybe you didn't cut quite right, or maybe your 1/4 inch seam wasn't quite right. So what I'll do is I'll pin at that juncture there where the seams come together. Then I'm going to match up my corners, and I'm going to pin here as well. Now the rest of this, we don't really have to line anything up, but what I do is I like to give it a grasp and then just pull it taut, and then I'll walk my fingers in to find my center, and then I can pin there. And then from the rest of it, I can just give it a nice little bit of tension just to straighten those edges out, keep everything nice and even on the side edges, and we're gonna have a block that fits together really well. So when I'm all done with my block, the last step I do is I'll give it a good spray with my spray mister. And I'm just going to go over that with the iron. Now I'm not going to iron this like a shirt because we don't want to warp the block. But I am going to make sure that I'm going across all the parts. And you can see already, like, this bottom half looks so much flatter than the top half because we really took that time, got it really nice and flat. And this is going to make it so much easier to join your blocks. They're going to lay really nice if it takes a little bit between when you finish your blocks and get your quilt sewn together. I'm guilty of that many times. And then you will be good to go. So this is it. The block just looks fantastic. And I'm just gonna real quick go grab a couple extra blocks so you can kind of see what this looks like when it comes together, because this forms a really cool secondary design. I want you guys to see it. All right, so I grabbed some extra blocks. I'm not gonna sew them together here on camera because we got to figure out the best scrappiest layout, and we haven't done that yet. But you can see that when you put this together, when we have our different cornerstones and those tiny or the smaller little squares come together with the tiny one in the center, it creates that secondary design of this cool little 5-patch. And so you're going to see that throughout the entire quilt, and it just looks so fun. And what you want to do when you put it together is just mix it up as much as you can. Like, I probably wouldn't in the end keep these next to each other because this is the same print and I feel like that's too close. But it looks really cute, it's really fun, and it really goes very fast. Like, when you look at it, it looks like you're cutting a whole bunch of tiny pieces and rectangles and then bigger pieces, but it's not. You're going to strip piece, you're going to cut it apart, you're going to sew it back together, and it's going to look fabulous when it is all done. And this is just such a fun quilt. It's a great way to show off the fabric, and especially when you have a lot of those medium and dark value prints, you put it next to a light background, and it's really fun. Again, we've got kits available for this while supplies last. The line is Spookier and Sweeter from Art Gallery Fabrics. You're going to get the same fat quarters we use for our focus prints, and you get to pick your own background. We have a limited quantity of this cross and bone, but we have a bunch of other ones that are also light value. Some of them are busier than others, but there's enough contrast in the value that it's still going to look great and show off all your spooky fabrics. I hope you enjoyed this. The pattern is exclusive to my book, Fat Quarter Patchwork Quilts, which is now available. You can get a signed copy from our website, so make sure you go and grab that. I'm going to try to make it work to where we have special tiered discounts. So if you get additional ones of my books, you're going to get to save more money. Don't hold me to that because I have to make sure I can figure out how to do that on the back end of our website. I think I can. We'll see. One other tip I'm going to leave you with is when you are pinning your rows together, I would do the trick where you mark the backs. That way you can continue to have this going all the way across and it doesn't look like jagged, because that wouldn't look so good. But this looks very good. It looks very fun, creates a really fun quilt, but not a ton of time committed in order to making it happen. So we can definitely maybe get the top done at least before Halloween, and then you can enjoy it quilted for next year. So stay tuned. We're going to do a quilting video on this as well. I'm going to quilt spider webs. So I'm very excited about that. And then we're gonna do some loop-de-loops in order to join our spider webs. So it'll look like a spider just spun its web across the entire quilt. And I think it's gonna be super fun. I'm gonna use light pink thread. I'm very excited. Can you tell? I'm very excited about this quilting plan. I don't normally get super excited about quilting plans, but this is very different than what I normally do. I think it's gonna be perfect for this quilt. So check it out. Everything is over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Join our email list there. You can get 10% off your first purchase, including brand new stuff like this. And until next time, happy quilting.